Have you ever felt like you're losing yourself? Not because you're failing, but because the life that once made sense no longer does. Maybe you're feeling confused about your future. Maybe you're questioning your purpose. Maybe you've been praying for answers, searching for direction, and wondering why everything feels so uncertain. Deep down, you keep asking yourself, why do I feel so lost? But what if feeling lost is not a sign that you're moving away from your path? What if it's a sign that you're being called to a deeper one? The great Sufi master Ibn Arabi taught that before the soul awakens, it often passes through a period of confusion. Before a new chapter begins, the old one must end. Before deeper wisdom arrives, the certainty you've been holding on to must sometimes fall apart. So perhaps the confusion you're experiencing isn't a mistake. Perhaps it's a transformation. Perhaps the doors that are closing, the plans that are changing, and the uncertainty you're facing are not happening to you. They are happening for you. In this video, we'll explore 7 powerful spiritual lessons from Ibn Arabi that reveal the hidden reason you feel lost right now. And by the end, you may discover that what feels like the most confusing season of your life is actually the beginning of your awakening. The old version of you is dying. One of the deepest reasons you may feel lost right now is that you are standing between 2 versions of yourself. The person you once were is slowly fading away, yet the person you are meant to become has not fully emerged. This in-between stage can feel confusing, lonely, and even frightening. The beliefs that once guided you no longer bring certainty. The goals that once motivated you no longer inspire you. It feels as if something inside you is changing, but you cannot yet understand what it is. According to Ibn Arabi, this experience is not a sign of failure. It is often a sign of spiritual transformation. Before the soul can rise to a higher level of awareness, it must let go of the identities, attachments, and illusions that no longer serve its growth. This process feels painful because the ego resists change. It wants to hold on to what is familiar, even when that familiarity is preventing us from becoming who we are truly meant to be. What feels like confusion may actually be a sacred transformation taking place beneath the surface. Just as a seed must break apart before it can become a tree, and just as a caterpillar disappears before a butterfly can emerge, your old self must begin to dissolve before a new self can be born. The loss of clarity you are experiencing may not mean you are losing your way. It may mean that your soul is preparing for a new beginning, one greater than anything you have known before. God is pulling you away from false directions. One of the most painful experiences in life is watching your plans fall apart. A relationship ends, an opportunity disappears, a dream collapses, and suddenly you find yourself wondering why everything is going wrong. In those moments, it is easy to believe that you are being punished or abandoned. But Ibn Arabi taught a very different perspective. Sometimes what feels like a loss is actually a form of divine guidance. Not every closed door is meant to hurt you. Some doors close because they lead away from the person you are meant to become. The path you wanted may not be the path your soul truly needs, yet because we can only see a small part of the journey, we often mistake redirection for rejection. We grieve what is leaving our lives without realizing that God may be protecting us from destinations that would have left us empty. When you feel lost, it may be because the map you are following is no longer the right one. Life is forcing you to release a direction that was never meant to be your final destination. Although the future may seem uncertain, trust that there is wisdom behind every delay, every ending, and every unexpected change. Sometimes God removes what is familiar so that He can lead you towards something far greater. What appears to be a detour today may one day reveal itself as the very thing that saved your journey. The soul grows in uncertainty. Most people spend their lives searching for certainty. They want clear answers, predictable outcomes, and guarantees about the future. We naturally feel safe when we know what comes next. But according to Ibn Arabi, some of the soul's greatest growth happens precisely when certainty disappears. The moments that make us feel lost are often the moments that are shaping us the most. When everything is going according to plan, it is easy to feel confident. But when the future becomes unclear, when doors close unexpectedly, and when life refuses to give us answers, something deeper begins to happen within us. We are forced to let go of our need to control every outcome. We begin to realize that our understanding is limited and that there is a wisdom greater than our own guiding the journey. This is why uncertainty can become a powerful spiritual teacher. It teaches patience when we want immediate answers. It teaches trust when we want proof. And it teaches faith when we can no longer rely on our own plans. What feels like wandering through darkness may actually be the process of strengthening your soul. Perhaps the reason you feel lost is not because you have taken the wrong path. Perhaps it is because God is teaching you to walk forward without seeing the entire road ahead. And sometimes the deepest faith is born not when everything makes sense, but when you continue moving forward even when it doesn't. You are being called inward. One of the greatest mistakes people make when they feel lost is assuming that the answer must be found somewhere outside themselves. They search for happiness in achievements, validation in other people, purpose in success, and peace in circumstances. They believe that if they can just find the right opportunity, the right relationship, or the right situation, the emptiness they feel inside will finally disappear. Yet no matter how much they gain, a quiet sense of dissatisfaction often remains. Ibn Arabi taught that the deepest journey is not the journey across the world, it is the journey within. The soul was never designed to find lasting fulfillment in external things alone. Beneath all worldly desires lies a deeper longing, a longing to reconnect with the divine source from which it came. When this longing is ignored, the soul begins to feel restless. Life may appear successful on the outside, yet something inside feels incomplete. This is why periods of feeling lost can be spiritually significant. They often occur when the distractions that once occupied your attention begin to lose their power over you. The things that once excited you no longer bring the same satisfaction. The goals that once seemed important suddenly feel empty. You may not understand why this is happening, but your soul does. It is no longer content with surface-level answers. It is calling you towards something deeper. Many people try to escape this feeling by staying busy. They fill every moment with noise, entertainment, work, and endless distractions because silence forces them to face what is happening inside. But the more they run from themselves, the more lost they become. The truth is that some answers can only be discovered in stillness. Some truths can only be heard when the noise of the world fades away. According to Ibn Arabi, every human being carries signs of the divine within their own heart. But these signs are often hidden beneath layers of fear, attachment, pride, and distraction. Sometimes life creates a season of confusion precisely so those layers can begin to fall away. What feels like emptiness may actually be making space for a deeper awareness. What feels like loneliness may be an invitation to develop a closer relationship with God. Perhaps the reason you feel lost right now is not because you have drifted away from your path. Perhaps it is because your soul is inviting you to look inward for the first time in a deeper way. Instead of constantly searching outside yourself for answers, this season may be asking you to listen to the wisdom that has been quietly waiting within you all along. The journey inward is not always comfortable. It requires honesty, reflection, and patience. But it is often on this inner journey that people discover who they truly are. And in discovering their true self, they begin to discover the presence of God in a way they never experienced before. Sometimes feeling lost is not a sign that you need to go somewhere else. Sometimes it is a sign that you need to come home to yourself. Your expectations are being broken, so a greater reality can emerge. One of the most painful experiences in life is watching reality refuse to follow the script we carefully wrote in our minds. We all create expectations. We imagine how our future will unfold, when our success will arrive, who will stay in our lives, and what our journey should look like. Without realizing it, we become emotionally attached not only to our dreams, but also to the specific way we expect those dreams to happen. We tell ourselves that by a certain age we will have achieved our goals. We expect certain relationships to last forever. We assume that if we work hard enough, life will reward us according to our plans. And when reality unfolds differently, we feel confused, disappointed, and sometimes completely lost. We begin to question ourselves, our decisions, and even our faith. The gap between what we expected and what actually happened becomes a source of deep suffering. Ibn Arabi understood a profound spiritual truth. Much of human suffering comes not from reality itself, but from our attachment to how we think reality should be. The ego wants certainty. It wants life to follow its plans. It wants the future to unfold according to its desires. But the wisdom of God is far greater than the imagination of the human mind. What we see as the perfect path is often limited by our own understanding, while God sees the entire journey from beginning to end. This is why some of the greatest turning points in life begin with disappointment. A door closes that we desperately wanted to walk through. A relationship we depended on comes to an end. A dream we spent years chasing suddenly falls apart. In those moments, it feels as though life is being taken away from us. But what if something else is happening? What if life is not taking something away, but clearing space for something greater? Think about how many times people look back on painful moments and realize that what once felt like a disaster was actually a blessing in disguise. The opportunity they lost led them to a better one. The relationship that ended prevented years of suffering. The failure they feared became the beginning of a completely different and more meaningful path. At the time, they could not see the wisdom behind the experience. They only saw the pain of losing what they expected. According to Ibn Arabi, spiritual growth often begins when our illusions are shattered. The expectations we cling to can become invisible prisons. They convince us that happiness exists only in one outcome, one person, one opportunity, or one version of the future. But God is not limited by our imagination. There are possibilities beyond what we can currently see. There are blessings hidden in directions we have not yet considered. When life breaks your expectations, it also breaks your dependence on them. It forces you to release the belief that your plans are the only plans worth following. This surrender is difficult because the ego interprets uncertainty as danger. Yet the soul understands something deeper. The soul understands that every ending creates space for a new beginning, and that every shattered illusion brings us closer to truth. Perhaps the reason you feel lost right now is because the future you expected no longer exists. The picture you created in your mind has fallen apart, and you are standing in the unfamiliar space that remains. But do not mistake this space for failure. Do not assume that because your expectations have been broken, your life has been ruined. Sometimes what breaks your heart is also breaking your limitations. Sometimes what destroys your plans is making room for a destiny far greater than the one you imagine. And sometimes the greatest act of faith is trusting that when one vision dies, God may be preparing to reveal a much bigger one. The path ahead may not look the way you expected. It may be stranger, slower, and more uncertain than you wanted. But the spiritual journey is not about getting everything you planned for. It is about becoming the person you were created to be. And often that transformation begins when the expectations you once depended on finally fall away. What if this season is not the destruction of your future? What if it is the beginning of a future greater than anything you have imagined? You are learning the sacred art of surrender. One of the hardest lessons a human being can learn is the lesson of surrender. We spend most of our lives trying to control everything around us, because control gives us the illusion of safety. We want certainty about the future, guarantees that our plans will succeed, reassurance that the people we love will remain by our side, and confidence that life will unfold according to the vision we have carefully created in our minds. Deep within us exists a belief that if we can organize enough details, predict enough outcomes, and avoid enough mistakes, we will finally arrive at a place where nothing can disturb our peace. Yet sooner or later, life confronts us with a truth that cannot be avoided. Control is largely an illusion. No matter how intelligent, successful, disciplined, or prepared we become, there will always be forces beyond our reach. We cannot control time as it moves relentlessly forward. We cannot control the hearts and decisions of other people. We cannot control every circumstance, every opportunity, every loss, or every outcome. And when reality refuses to cooperate with our expectations, we often experience frustration, anxiety, disappointment, and confusion. According to Ibn Arabi, much of human suffering comes not because life is against us, but because we are engaged in a struggle we were never meant to win. We resist what is happening. We argue with reality. We demand that life conform to our preferences. We cling to the belief that things should be different from what they are. This resistance slowly exhausts the heart, because the more we attempt to force existence into the shape we desire, the more painful it becomes when existence refuses to obey. This is where surrender enters the spiritual path. Unfortunately, many people misunderstand the meaning of surrender. They hear the word and immediately associate it with weakness, passivity, resignation, or defeat. They imagine someone giving up on life, abandoning responsibility, or accepting failure. But Ibn Arabi spoke of a much deeper and more powerful form of surrender. True surrender is not weakness at all. It is one of the highest expressions of spiritual strength. It is the ability to trust the wisdom of God even when His wisdom remains hidden from your understanding. It is the courage to continue walking forward when the road ahead is unclear. Anyone can trust when life is easy and everything appears to be working in their favor. Anyone can feel faithful when prayers seem to be answered immediately and the future looks bright. But what happens when the road disappears beneath your feet? What happens when your plans collapse despite your best efforts? What happens when the answers you seek never arrive, when the doors you expected to open remain closed, and when you find yourself standing in a chapter of life that makes no sense? It is precisely in these moments that surrender becomes real. The soul begins to mature when it learns to say, "I do not understand this moment, but I trust that there is wisdom within it." This trust does not mean abandoning effort or becoming indifferent to your future. It does not mean refusing to pursue goals or neglecting responsibilities. Rather, it means releasing the belief that your inner peace depends upon controlling every outcome. It means understanding that while effort belongs to you, results belong to God. Many people spend years trapped in cycles of anxiety because they are attempting to solve problems that only time, experience, and divine wisdom can resolve. They replay conversations endlessly in their minds, wondering what they should have said differently. They obsess over decisions they have already made. They worry about possibilities that may never happen. They carry the weight of an uncertain future on their shoulders every day, as though they alone are responsible for holding the universe together. Eventually, this burden becomes unbearable because the human heart was never designed to carry such a load. Surrender offers another way of living. Instead of carrying the entire future, you carry only the responsibilities of today. Instead of demanding certainty before taking the next step, you practice trust. Instead of fighting every unanswered question, you learn to live peacefully alongside mystery. Ibn Arabi believed that the divine wisdom operating throughout existence is infinitely greater than the understanding of any human being. What appears chaotic, unfair, or meaningless from our limited perspective may actually be part of a perfect design that we cannot yet perceive. A child undergoing surgery may only experience pain and fear, unable to understand why the surgeon is causing discomfort. Yet the surgeon sees a healing that the child cannot imagine. In the same way, there are moments in life when we see only confusion, loss, disappointment, and uncertainty. We see only the immediate pain of the experience. But God sees the entire journey. He sees where the road leads long before we arrive there. He sees the lessons that must be learned, the wounds that must be healed, the strengths that must be developed, and the person we are gradually becoming through every challenge we face. This is why some of the most transformative periods of life are also the most uncertain. During these seasons, the soul is being trained to rely less on control and more on trust. It is learning that peace does not come from knowing everything that will happen tomorrow. Peace comes from knowing that God already knows. Reflect on the moments when you felt most lost, most confused, or most uncertain. Chances are those moments shaped you in ways comfort never could. They forced you to become stronger when you thought you could not continue. They taught you patience when everything inside you demanded immediate answers. They deepened your faith when external certainty disappeared. At the time, you probably wished those experiences would end as quickly as possible. Yet looking back, you may realize they were preparing you for a version of yourself that could not have emerged any other way. The greatest obstacle to surrender is often the ego. The ego craves certainty, explanations, guarantees, and control. It insists, I will trust once I understand everything. But spiritual wisdom teaches the opposite. It teaches that understanding often comes after trust, not before it. Some truths reveal themselves only to those who are willing to walk forward without seeing the entire path. This is why surrender is so powerful. It frees you from the impossible responsibility of controlling life itself. It allows you to stop fighting every circumstance and begin learning from it. It transforms fear into faith, anxiety into acceptance, and resistance into peace. It creates space within the heart for calmness, even when uncertainty remains. Perhaps the reason you feel lost right now is because life is teaching you this sacred lesson. Perhaps God is gently loosening your grip on the things you have been trying so desperately to control. Perhaps the uncertainty you are experiencing is not a punishment but a preparation. Perhaps it is teaching your heart to trust more deeply than it ever has before. One day, you may look back on this season and realize that it was not the moment when your life was falling apart. It was the moment when you finally stopped trying to carry the universe on your shoulders. It was the moment when you discovered that peace is not found in controlling every detail of existence. Peace is found in trusting the one who already holds every detail in his hands. And that is the sacred art of surrender. Feeling lost is often the beginning of awakening. Perhaps the most surprising lesson that Ibn Arabi teaches is this: the people who are closest to a spiritual awakening are often the ones who feel the most lost. This idea seems almost impossible to accept because everything in modern life teaches us the opposite. We are taught that certainty is strength, that confidence is proof of progress, and that having all the answers means we are moving in the right direction. As a result, whenever we find ourselves confused, uncertain, or unable to see where our lives are heading, we immediately assume that something has gone wrong. We believe we have failed, taken a wrong turn, or somehow drifted away from our purpose. We compare ourselves to people who appear confident and successful, and we wonder why our own path feels so unclear. Yet Ibn Arabi invites us to consider a possibility that completely transforms the way we view these difficult seasons. What if feeling lost is not evidence that you are moving away from the truth? What if it is actually a sign that you are moving closer to it than ever before? The spiritual journey is not a straight road leading from ignorance to certainty. It is not simply a process of collecting answers until every mystery disappears. In fact, the deeper one travels into spiritual reality, the more one realizes how limited ordinary understanding truly is. Before deeper wisdom can enter your life, many of the assumptions you once depended upon must begin to crumble. Before a new understanding can emerge, the old understanding must be questioned. Before a more authentic version of yourself can be born, the identity you have spent years constructing often begins to dissolve. This process can feel frightening because it removes the familiar structures that once gave you a sense of stability. Yet this dismantling is not a sign of failure. It is often the very beginning of transformation. Awakening rarely begins with certainty. More often, it begins with confusion, because confusion is what happens when old illusions can no longer survive and new truths have not yet fully revealed themselves. Imagine a person who has spent their entire life asleep in a dark room. For years, darkness has been all they have known. Then one day, a window suddenly opens and light begins to pour into the room. At first, that light would not feel comforting. It would feel overwhelming. It would disturb everything the person had become accustomed to. Their eyes would struggle to adjust. They might even wish for the darkness to return because it feels familiar and safe. Yet the discomfort would not be caused by the light itself. It would be caused by the transition from darkness to illumination. The same thing happens on the spiritual path. Many people imagine awakening as an immediate experience of peace, clarity, and certainty. They expect it to feel beautiful from the very beginning. But in reality, awakening often starts by disrupting the comfortable illusions we have built our lives around. The beliefs we never questioned begin to crack. The identities we depended on begin to weaken. The goals we once thought would fulfill us lose their power. The things we chased for years suddenly feel empty. This can be deeply unsettling because the mind prefers familiar illusions over unfamiliar truths. The ego, by its very nature, seeks certainty. It wants predictable answers, clear definitions, and a future that can be controlled. It wants to know exactly who it is, exactly where it is going, and exactly how everything will unfold. Awakening challenges all of these desires. It invites us into a reality that is far deeper than the ego can comprehend. It asks us to trust what cannot always be seen, to embrace mystery instead of demanding certainty, and to recognize that life is far greater than the limited stories we tell ourselves. This is why so many spiritual seekers pass through seasons of confusion before they experience clarity. The confusion is not the opposite of awakening. The confusion is often part of awakening itself. It is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the sacred threshold where old identities die and deeper truths begin to emerge. Throughout history, many of the world's greatest spiritual figures experienced periods of uncertainty, loneliness, and inner struggle before reaching profound wisdom. Their journeys were not defined by constant clarity. They were defined by their willingness to remain present in uncertainty long enough for transformation to occur. Before they discovered deeper truths, they were forced to confront their fears, doubts, attachments, and false identities. Their awakening did not begin when they found all the answers. It began when the questions became impossible to ignore. Ibn Arabi understood that every human being carries within them a deeper reality waiting to be discovered. Yet this reality is often hidden beneath layers of conditioning. From childhood, we are taught who we should be, what we should value, and how we should define success. Over time, these ideas become so deeply ingrained that we mistake them for our true selves. We spend years building an identity based on expectations, achievements, and external validation, never realizing how far we may have drifted from the deeper essence of our soul. Then life interrupts the story. A loss occurs, a dream collapses, a relationship changes, a season of uncertainty arrives without warning. Suddenly, the identity we spent years constructing no longer feels secure. The future we imagined disappears. The answers we relied upon stop working. What once felt solid begins to crumble beneath our feet. In these moments, it is easy to believe that life is falling apart. Yet spiritually speaking, something very different may be happening. What feels like a crisis may actually be an invitation. It may be life asking you to discover who you are beyond your achievements, beyond your possessions, beyond your titles, and beyond the labels you have carried for so long. It may be an invitation to meet the deeper self that has been waiting beneath the surface all along. The soul awakens when it begins to seek something deeper than temporary satisfaction. It awakens when it realizes that no achievement, no relationship, no amount of wealth, and no worldly success can permanently fill the longing within the human heart. It awakens when it understands that the heart was created for something greater than endless striving. This awakening rarely happens overnight. It unfolds gradually, often through experiences we initially resist. Sometimes it begins with a quiet feeling that something is missing. Sometimes it begins with disappointment. Sometimes it begins with suffering. And sometimes it begins with the overwhelming feeling of being completely lost. Yet hidden within that feeling is a profound opportunity. When you no longer know who you are, you become open to discovering who you truly are. When your old answers stop working, you become available for deeper truths. When your old path disappears, you create space for a new path to emerge. This is why periods of uncertainty can become sacred. They strip away what is false and expose what is real. They force us to stop living on autopilot and begin asking the questions that truly matter. Who am I beneath all the roles I play? Why am I here? What is my soul truly seeking? What is God trying to teach me through this experience? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awakening. The person who never questions anything may remain comfortable, but comfort alone rarely leads to transformation. Growth belongs to those who are willing to enter uncertainty in search of truth. It belongs to those who have the courage to sit with unanswered questions rather than rushing toward easy answers. Perhaps the reason you feel lost right now is because your soul is awakening to realities that your mind cannot fully understand yet. Perhaps the discomfort you feel is the result of old illusions falling away. Perhaps the confusion is not evidence that you are failing, but evidence that you are changing. One day the pieces may begin to fit together in ways you cannot currently imagine. One day the lessons hidden within this season may become clear. One day you may look back and realize that the chapter you feared most was actually preparing you for your greatest transformation. You may discover that what felt like an ending was actually a beginning, that what felt like darkness was actually preparation for light, and that what felt like being lost was actually the first step toward finding yourself. And perhaps that is the greatest spiritual secret of all. The soul does not awaken because life becomes easy. The soul awakens because life becomes deep enough to force us beyond the surface. It awakens when certainty disappears and we are invited into trust. It awakens when familiar identities fall away and we are called to discover something more authentic. So if you feel lost today, do not be too quick to judge your journey. Do not assume that confusion means failure, or that uncertainty means you have wandered off course. You may be standing at the threshold of a transformation you cannot yet see. You may be far closer to awakening than you realize, and the path that seems uncertain today may one day reveal itself as the very path that led you home. Conclusion. If there is one lesson we can take from Ibn Arabi, it is this: feeling lost does not mean you are abandoned. It does not mean you have failed, and it certainly does not mean that God has forgotten you. Sometimes the soul must pass through uncertainty before it discovers clarity. Sometimes old identities must fall apart before a more authentic self can emerge. Sometimes the path disappears, not because you are being punished, but because you are being guided towards something deeper than you can currently understand. The difficult season you are living through right now may have a purpose that is hidden from your eyes. The confusion, the waiting, the unanswered questions, and the feeling that life is not unfolding according to your plans may all be part of a transformation taking place within you. While your mind sees chaos, your soul may be learning trust. While your ego sees loss, your spirit may be discovering freedom. While you feel lost, God may be leading you exactly where you need to go. One day you may look back on this chapter and realize that it was never the season that broke you. It was the season that awakened you. It was the season that taught you surrender, deepened your faith, and revealed strengths you never knew you possessed. What feels like darkness today may eventually become the reason you learn to appreciate the light. So if you are feeling lost right now, do not rush to escape the journey. Trust that there is wisdom in this moment, even if you cannot see it yet. Trust that every closed door, every delay, every challenge, and every uncertainty is serving a purpose greater than your understanding. Because sometimes the moment you feel most lost is the moment your soul is closest to finding its way home. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever gone through a period of feeling lost that later changed your life for the better? And if you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more timeless spiritual wisdom inspired by the teachings of Ibn Arabi. Until next time, stay patient, stay present, and trust the journey.